Hello everyone, hopefully you're all doing well today. My name is Toon World, as some of you may already know, and today we are going to be tackling a pure punk build post Power of the Elements. Power of the Elements dropped last week, or if you're watching this video much later, it dropped on August 5th, 2022, and with the set we got two new cards for Punk, Dragon Drive here and Extreme Session. These are amazing additions to the archetype, and it definitely pushes it a little bit above Rogue in my opinion, as well as keeping or maintaining its status as a viable engine in a lot of different variants or hybrid builds. Today, I'm going to showcase to you the deck that I've decided to play, and I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. If you've seen my previous deck profiles, they tend to go really long, like 20, 30, 40 minutes. We're going to try and keep it 20 minutes or under today. So my explanations will be a lot briefer than normal. If you have any concerns with that, just please let me know in the comments below. Also, if there's anything I say in this video that you might disagree with, you might want an elaboration on, you can always, again, feel free to comment down below. Aside from that, I do want to remind all of you that I'm not the best player in the world. I don't go out that often to play in like big tournaments and such. I go to locals, but beyond that, not too much. So my deck profile, my deck list may not be the best deck profile available. And so I want you all to remember that, just because I don't want you to think that you must be playing this particular version and or that I think this version for some reason is better than others, because it definitely isn't. That out of the way, remember to like and subscribe, and we will get into the video. Okay, so I'm going to get started with the main deck monsters, firstly with the Punk names. So we are currently playing 2 copies of Cherkusai, 1 copy of Wagon, 1 copy of Spider, 3 copies of Z-Amin, 3 copies of Deer Note, 3 copies of Foxy Tune, and then 3 copies of Ogre Dance. So with Ogre Dance, Foxy Tune, and Z-Amin, I feel like these should be self-explanatory to either newer Punk players and or older Punk players. This being able to search any of your names is great, bar Foxy Tune of course. Z-Amin searches any of your names, period. And then Foxy Tune is your sort of pseudo e-telly, outside of course, emergency teleport. So I wouldn't play any less than 3 of these. And I know some people might be playing 2 of Ogre Dance, but I believe 3 is absolutely necessary, just because, again, being able to search anything, it's also a dark type for Chaos Ruler, so sometimes you can lead off with Ogre Dance, get it engraved for Chaos Ruler, rather than having to rely on, say, milling a dark, which isn't always possible. Now, to get to the other Punk names, 1 Madam Spider should be self-explanatory. I'm only playing 1 trap. It is the Nashiwari Surprise as opposed to Dangerous Gabu, and so you don't usually need more than 1, otherwise you'll end up bricking. I know you could play multiple to have extra names for Extreme Session, though that if that is what you desire, I'd just play 1 of these in higher copies instead. 1 copy of Wagon. Now that we have a spell card to search, that is actually good. No offense to the continuous spells, but of course they aren't as good. This is now a viable inclusion to grab the field spell if you need to. You could play more if you wanted to, because there is combos where you can say normal this, go into Almirage, and then use the field spell to summon from hand. Though I didn't find in testing that I needed to do that too often, since you'd open 1 of these starters instead. And so that sort of voids the reason of normal summoning this in the first place. With the 2 Cherkusai, I didn't want to play 1 because my particular build, as you'll see, does not play the Gizmek Shinobi combo, and so I do rely on Cherkusai a lot more, being summoned off of Hulk, to do synchro plays during my opponent's turn. So having 1 for that purpose, while also having the second one for, say, making Rising Carp if I get hand trapped, or if I'm going into my second turn and I want to ODK or get out more bodies, 2 is nice for that. 3 I think is a bit excessive, but I might get around to testing it. Finally, 3 Deer Note. Depending on who you ask, this could be it could be designated as mandatory. Some people might say 2 is mandatory instead. My reasoning for 3 is, even though you typically want to summon this off of the Foxy Tune, it's not terrible to open this anymore, mainly because 1, the field spell you can summon this from hand, And so in those cases where Foxy Tune, you don't have it and or you can't resolve it, you can get Deer Note out directly. Secondly, if you get hand trapped and you have Deer Note already in hand, like let's say Foxy Tune gets Ash, you can just summon this from hand with its own effect, which is nice. So I like having 3 just for that purpose, mainly being able to guarantee that you can get it on field so that you can combo, since this is such a crucial part of most of your Punk combos. So for the sort of excess monsters that don't fit into Punk names or hand traps, I'm going to put one up here, one here to sort of, you know, center things a little bit better. This is going to seem a little bit weird to some of you, especially since the Shinobi Gizmek build is performing so well for pure variants. I am playing Plague Spreader and I am playing Psychic Wielder. My reasoning for this, and you have to hear me out, 1, I haven't tested enough to know how good this is. 2, with Plague Spreader Zombie, as I had said, since I'm not playing the Gizmek package, it's not as good to summon the Necro, mainly because if you know with the Gizmek build, you're able to get it in grave after you make a level 10 synchro, and then you can then banish it off of Chaos Ruler, summon it back to the field. With my build, since you don't have that option, you know, you summon Hulk with the Chaos Ruler, you then summon the Shinobi Necro. Unless you're linking away the Hulk and the Necro, you don't do much with them. And so you can't get the Necro engraved to guarantee the banish to summon back. Meanwhile, with Plague Spreader, even though it does suck to lose a card, Extreme Session does help mediate that loss, as well as the fact that this is a free body at any point, whereas Necro relies on you specifically banishing it off of Chaos Ruler. Time will tell whether or not I'm actually right. Just remember that this is just what I felt would be best for my deck, and you don't have to necessarily follow it. Psychic Wielder falls into that same category of it's more so a personal preference rather than something you should actually follow, since again, not many people are playing any copies of this. My reasoning for this is sometimes with Dragon Drive, you might not have the field spell up, but you want an extender. This counts as an extender that can go into, say, Hulk, because of course you can just summon itself if you have a level 3 body on field. Let's say you have Dragon Drive, Zeomin summon back from Deer Note. You can search this, summon this, and then you have that additional body for Hulk or whatever you need to do. So that's why I'm playing 1, because you won't always open the field spell to extend. For the hand traps, we are playing 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, and 3 copies of Nibiru. I don't know if I have too much to say about these. I mean, really it's just your meta calls for the format. Ash is a great blanket card. Ghost Ogre hits Sprite pretty decently. It also hits, say, this deck with a field spell and or other decks in the format. I haven't tested enough to know the full extent, but it's pretty decent. You can also search it off Dragon Drive, which is nice. Nibiru, even though a lot of decks can play around it now, it is there sort of like check in my mind to make sure that any players that do not play around it can get punished. Also, this hits a lot of rogue decks very well, naturally, because they can't always play around Nibiru. Finally, Veiler. I am playing Gamma in the side. My reasoning for not playing in the main is because I like having cards that I can search off of Chaos Ruler that can be used rather than requiring, say, Lambda in the case of Gamma. Veiler achieves that option. It's also a Selene target because, as you will see, I am playing Selene. So this is all the main deck monsters I am playing, and we will now get to the spells and traps. So I think the spells and traps should be fairly straightforward. We're not playing too many, and a lot of builds really aren't playing too many. You might see some texts. For example, there's a recent list that got super poly in the main. Some people might be playing Desires, I'm not. The only spells and traps I'm playing currently are 3 copies of Emergency Teleport, 3 copies of Extreme Session, 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and 1 copy of Nashiwari Surprise. And I'm just going to move these over so that it looks, a little bit more uniform. So Emergency Teleport, Extreme Session, I don't think I need to explain these too much. Emergency Teleport is an extender. Of course, all of your Punk level 3s are psychics, and so this summons them out. Amazing card. I wouldn't play anything less than 3. I hope you understand why. The field spell, I would also play no less than 3. This card is absolutely busted, mainly because 1, it functions as a quote-unquote not hard once per turn extender in that you can activate it, summon from hand, and then if you have a second copy, you can always summon again. The draw effect is twice per turn, hard twice per turn, but it's still amazing. Just the fact that we can now draw cards off of our effects to replace any lost advantage from, say, Foxy Tune or any other card effects we use is broken. And so you'll notice that this helps you draw into hand traps, draws you into more extenders to continue your plays. Overall, a very broken card. Maybe even, you might even consider it a custom card, honestly. It's crazy how good it is, but would not play any less than 3. I would recommend playing 3. I would not recommend playing anything less than 3. 3 Cosmic, this is here for the meddling trap cards some decks might play. Some people are playing Ravelry in some of the rogue lists. Some people are playing Gozen and say Marincess. I know that isn't the most relevant thing, but that's the thing that comes to mind first. Sprite technically could also play Ravelry. So being able to deal with this, especially if some players are main decking certain floodgates, is nice. In the little testing I've done, I figured that there were a lot of cases where if I didn't have this main, I just ought to lose to one of those floodgates, and so I'd like to have this as an option to out them. I know that might be considered a sort of, beginner's thought process, but I think it's valid to have it here. Otherwise, if you don't like the Cosmics, you can always just play more hand traps, and that works perfectly fine as well. Finally, we are playing one copy of Nashiwari Surprise. You'll notice I'm not playing Gabu, and the reason why I cut Gabu, the fact that we can now have punk names on the field more reliable makes this card way, way better than Gabu. I know sometimes your board might get outed by Nib, or similar cards that then invalidate this card as a valid Raigeki break, but in the cases where you are able to keep this alive and keep it as a Raigeki break, that's when the game gets crazy, because popping one for free is really an amazing effect in any format. So that is why I'm opting to play one, especially with my build where you're going to be relying more on your punk names to make synchro plays rather than Gizmek. This card comes up a lot. So these are my spells and traps, and we will now get to the main deck, the extra deck. So with my extra deck, I'd like to think this is a pretty standard extra deck, bar 2 choices of mine, and I'll explain them when you actually see them. So we are playing 1 copy of Rising Carp, 1 copy of Dingurisu, 1 copy of Dark, 1 copy of Hulk, 1 copy of Celine, 1 copy of Almirage, 1 copy of Access Code Talker, 1 copy of, and this is not actually Changing, I'm playing Baron. You'll see in the top corner here that I'll keep up the fact that this is a Baron so that, you skip the video by accident, you know that this is a Baron and not Changing. 1 copy of Calamity, 1 copy of Dragon Drive, 1 copy of Formula Synchron, 1 copy of Chaos Ruler, 1 copy of Psychic N Punisher, and finally 2 copies of our favorite ace monster, Amazing Dragon. Now, I think most of this should be fairly straightforward. For example, Rising Carp, you need it for Shirakusai. Dark is a great monster in this format where there are a lot of dark targets to summon. Go into Celine, go into Access Code. Hulk is your main combo play. Celine gives you extra bodies for Access Code. I'm playing the Calamity combo still. I know a lot of people have dropped it, but I still like it. So that's why you have the Formula Synchron and the Calamity for that purpose. Dragon Drive is absolutely busted, being able to search any punk name and or Ghost Ogre and or Psychic Wielder. Also being able to recur itself if your opponent ever responds to punk effects is great. So getting this engraved if you can is nice. Chaos Ruler has been a staple for some time now in this build. Not only for me, but for punk in general. Being able to grab lights or darks, also being able to be a free body on demand versus Dragon Drive, which requires your opponent to react to you. Psychic N Punisher being a nice boss monster, your opponent can't out it. A towers of course. The 2 Amazing Dragon, some people play 1, some people play 2. I'm playing 2 because, again, as I keep emphasizing in this video, my build is more quick synchro based, and so I'll tend to use Shirakusai to go into 1 Amazing Dragon, and then the second one is for following turns where I need to use its recursion effect to go for game or get more bodies on field for plays. Now, oh, and then Baron, of course. Sorry, I forget this is Baron because, of course, it isn't actually Baron, but top corner, this is supposed to be Baron. And Baron's here, of course, for those cases where you do want to quick synchro into Baron, and or you have enough bodies to where you can make Baron and the Calamity. Now, the two things that might catch you off guard are the Almirage and the Dingrisu. I know a lot of people are playing, what is it? Zombie, or the Zombie Vampire, and also Lambda. Lambda, of course, it should make sense here why I'm not playing it. I'm not playing Gamma in the main, so I didn't feel like I would want to allocate an extra deck spot to a side deck option. Almirage is in here because you can use it to combo. Both Xiamin, Spider, and Wagon are all under 1,000 attack, and sometimes, let's say they get hit by hand trap, you don't have a hard extender, but you have the field spell. You can link off one of those three into into Almirage, you activate the field spell, banish that name from grave, and then summon whatever else you have in hand to continue your play. So that's why I'm playing the Almirage. The Dingrisu, this is gonna sound very, very weird, and I apologize, but I do not like Zombie Vampire that much. One, in a pure build, you don't really need to mill too much, and since I'm not playing the Gizmek build, you don't have a Gizmek to mill. Furthermore, I strongly dislike the idea of milling for your opponent, especially in a format where tier elements could be powerful, and then you also have a lot of other rogue options that benefit from having stuff in grave. So Dingrisu, I feel, is a strong second alternative just because, of course, it is non-targeting removal, and it does offer protection to your field that can be very pesky for your opponent to deal with. This summarizes my thoughts for the extra deck. Again, if I went through it too fast, feel free to comment down below, or otherwise, I will get into the side deck. So you all want to remember that side decks, I feel like this is probably the most subjective part of most decks, mainly because it really depends on your play style and what your meta calls are, you know, what particular decks you want to combat and or what cards you think will best combat the format overall. For me, I am playing the Psy-Frame package, you know, 3 Gamma, 1 Driver. I'm playing 3 copies of Drone Lockbird. I'm playing 3 copies of Swilling Twisters, Twin Twisters of course. I'm also playing 3 copies of There Can Only Be One, and finally 2 copies of Evenly Matched. So, the reason why I'm playing Gamma, it's an amazing hand trap. In my case, as I explained in the main deck portion of this video, I didn't feel it was worthy for me to include, mainly because I don't like being able to, or I don't like drawing it off of the Chaos Ruler, since you can actually use it. I know that's a very potentially like small reason to not include it, but I have my personal preferences. So if you want to main deck, you can definitely main deck it. You definitely saw that there were some spots that you could cut from my particular list to put it in there. The 3 Drone Lockbird, there's so many decks nowadays that search. Sprite does it, Branded does it. If you come across certain, Flunder as well. So it's a nice side deck option right now. The Twin Twisters, mainly just hit back row. Same thing with the Evenly. These might change. Again, as I mentioned a few times in the video, I haven't tested as much as I would have liked to sort of foolproof my reasoning for this deck profile. Nonetheless, I do think one of these might be a good inclusion. If you have Lightning Storms, I would definitely replace the Twin Twisters, and then you could drop the Evenlies. Finally, we're playing 3 copies of There Can Only Be One. As you might recall, let me pull up the deck. Even though all your level 3s are psychics, you have warriors, you have fiends, you have beasts, and then a lot of the extra deck, as I get to it, Hauck's a machine, you have Rising Carp as a fish. A lot of your plays aren't necessarily the same type, and so being able to play this into a format that can be very type restricted. I know I keep mentioning Sprite, but it is one of the potentially top contenders for the next format, and it is all Thunder for the most part, so this can help stop them. It also stops, say, Branded, because most of them are fiends, if I recall. It can also stop other decks like Tailorments, Fairies, so forth. So the fact that you can play this in this deck, I would definitely recommend you try it in the side, because it can definitely blow out your opponent in the right situations. So this is my side deck. Again, as I keep saying, if you would like any elaboration on anything I said, because I did go a little bit quickly this time versus other deck profiles, let me know in the comments below. I'm also open to suggestions. And we'll get on with our final thoughts. Okay, so for my final commentary on this deck profile, I want to go for two things. One, what I think about my deck profile overall, and two, what I think about Punk moving forward in the post-Power of the Elements format. Now with my particular lists, again, I said this multiple times during the video and I want to emphasize it just so that you understand that this is not the deck or the best deck profile in the world. I have not tested a lot yet with Punk. As you might have seen from the way I posted videos on my channel, I did take a break from Yu-Gi-Oh! And so I'm now just getting back in now that Power of the Elements has dropped. And I still need to test against some of the major contenders. I know I mentioned Sprite a lot, but I haven't tested against it yet. I've only had experience from post-Difo really, so. Regardless, I do think this deck profile, or this particular deck list is on the right track. Again, the Gizmic build might still be better, so I might end up converting to that. If I don't, then I might reconsider playing Plague Spreader Zombie and Psychic Wielder, just because I'm not sure how strong they are. I might also adjust the extra deck a little bit, just to accommodate certain things. For example, I might not play the Calamities combo anymore. I could just play Changing instead. If you skip this far, remember that up here, Changing is supposed to be a Baron. Just because you don't always have to quick synchro into Calamities, you can always just quick synchro into a Changing on top of your Baron. So that's about it though. So I'm pretty satisfied with this list, and I'll see how good it is with testing and I'll let all of you know. Now the second point, as I had said earlier, regarding Punk going forward in this format, I do think it will be a very valid contender just because the engine is very, very consistent. It can be very versatile in the sense that it can be used as an engine. It can also be very flexible within its own like pure build. You don't have to play Calamity combo. You could always play the Gizmic combos I keep alluding to. You could also try out unique synchro builds that we haven't explored potentially as much as what you see here. Also, the deck is very resilient in that now that you have the field spell, you also have 3 E-Tally as from before, and a lot of great extenders. You can definitely play through a lot of different hand traps. For example, I was testing recently against how certain test hands worked against hand traps. That will also coincidentally be my next video, where we will be running test hands to see how well they fare against certain hand traps in your opponent's hand. Regardless, this deck can play through multiple hand traps with the right hand, with the exception of say Nibiru, but aside from that, it is pretty resilient in that manner, and I do believe that's one of the reasons why it can contend, just because it won't fold as easily and it can still establish a strong lock, or it can establish a strong board. So all of this said, that's all I really want to say for the commentary. So thank you everyone for making it this far. A video shorter this time. Thank God potentially for some of you who do not like my 30 to 40 minute videos. If you did, then I apologize, but we can always talk in the comments below if you have any ideas you want to coin or any suggestions for my deck profile. Remember to like and subscribe. It does help the channel. We are on the road to 1K subscribers, and I'll have to think what I'll do once I get there, but regardless, it will be nice to reach that milestone. And enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and enjoy the rest of your life. Enjoy Punk as much as I do, hopefully, and I will see you around.